Greetings, new econ students. This is just a very introductory presentation here about some basic concepts when it comes to economics, with a bit of a focus on personal financial literacy. So we're going to go over some basic ideas here, starting with needs and wants.
I need a shelter, but I want toys. I need food, but I want games for my DS.
Now, I should mention this video is kind of old. That's why the kids are talking about Nintendo DS's and back and gone.
I need shelter, but I want Nintendo DS. I need shelter, but I want 100 back guns. I need clothing, but I want $1 billion. I need food, but I want new games for my Nintendo DS. I need shelter, but I want a new computer. I need shelter, but I want 1 million DSs. I need food, but I want 100 games for my DS. I need shelter, but I want boxing gloves. I need food, but I want Nintendo DS. I need shelter, but I want popcorn.
And just need some popcorn. Some of those kids are a little greedy anyway. All right. So the idea here is that the needs you have are fairly finite, right? You need land, you need, not land, you need water, air, food, shelter, clothing, right? If you name off the things you need, there's really not all that many of them. Okay, but now let's think about the things you want. If you consider the things you want, they are effectively infinite. You can't think of any sort of limitation to them. Once you achieve one want, you want something else. You want something more. And if you think about the wants of everybody in society, or even more, everybody on the planet, they're effectively infinite, right? There is no end to them. Now, the reason why this is a problem is because we have finite resources, right? We've only got so much land, that's natural resources of whatever kind. We only have so much labor, that'd be so many workers who can work at any one time. And we only have so much capital, right? The human-made resources, think of like factory, machineries. There's only so much of that, right? And there's only so much entrepreneurship, people who are going to be operating businesses. So because we have a limitation on land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, we have a limitation on resources, there's a limitation on what it is that we can produce. There's only so many goods that we can produce at any one time. There's only so many services that can be provided for people at any one time, which all means that there's only so many wants that can get satisfied at any one time. So we've got limited resources, but we're trying to use them to satisfy unlimited wants. Right? Finite resources, infinite wants. It can't be done. This is like trying to fill up a bottomless pit with a bucket. It's not going to happen. So this creates a little bit of a problem, and this problem is scarcity. The idea of scarcity in economic terms is the idea that you have unlimited resources that satisfy those unlimited wants. And since we can't satisfy all of them, we have to decide which wants we're going to satisfy, how we're going to satisfy those, and not others. All right. So, this is something that any economic system has to deal with, any society that has to deal with. They have to decide what they're going to produce. They have to decide how those things are going to get produced, and they have to decide who's going to be able to obtain those things. But scarcity is really the core problem of economics. It's why economic systems even exist to begin with, right? If you look at like capitalism, communism, socialism, the other economic isms, right? Really all of them start from the problem of scarcity. They all face it. The fact that we only have limited resources out there, but we have these unlimited ones. So any economic system has to decide how to deal with that. Who's going to get resources? How are the resources going to get allocated? An economic system is really about resource allocation. How are we going to allocate those scarce resources, those limited resources within the economy in order to satisfy wants? The different economic systems will address them in very different ways. All right? So capitalism will use a price allocation system. Communism is going to put under the auspices of the government. Socialism will put some of it under the auspices of the government and not others. But the dilemma here, or I shouldn't say dilemma, but the added problem with this is that scarcity also creates choice and it creates opportunity cost. Now, opportunity cost is what you give up in order to do something. Now, in order to do anything, you have to give up doing something else. Now, maybe you give up a whole range of options in order to do something, right? So, if you come to school in the morning, chances are good that you gave up sleeping. All right. Now, what you gave up was a whole bunch of different things, right? There are many things you could have done. You could have slept. You could have gone to work. You could earn money, right? You could have gone on vacation. You could have read. You could have watched TV, right? There's lots of things you could have done. But the opportunity cost is the thing you would have done. So it was alternative number one. So the thing that you would have done instead of what you actually did, right? So if it is the case that by coming to school in the morning you would have slept, that means that sleep was your opportunity cost. If it is the case that you would have gone to work had you not come to school this morning, then going to work would have been your opportunity cost. All right, so it's whatever you would have done that is going to be the opportunity cost. Okay. Now, society faces these decisions because it has limited resources, so it's got to decide what to do, right? And bear in mind that it faces opportunity costs, right? So that if we use our resources to make one thing, let's say we use a bunch of steel, right, to make some cars. Well, if we've used the steel to make the cars, that means we can't use that steel to make washing machines and dryers, right? Or something else with the steel, whatever it is we would have produced instead. There's opportunity cost when it comes to labor also, right? You as an individual, right? So if you've got a job, when you're working that job, your labor is not available to be provided at some other workplace. So if I'm teaching, well, my labor is being used for teaching. My labor can't be used at someplace else where I'd probably be earning more money. You face this, right? And you face it on a personal level, right? You've only got so much time to be able to spend doing things. Time itself is never an opportunity cost. You don't have the option of not spending time. You spend time no matter what. Opportunity cost is what you would have spent that time doing, okay, if that was being the case. All right. But I have a limited amount of money, I have a limited amount of time, right? So I got to decide how I'm going to use my time, my limited time. I got to decide how I'm going to use my limited money, all right? If I spend my time doing one thing, I can't spend it doing something else, right? If I spend my money on one thing, I now cannot buy something else, right? The real cost of you buying something is not going to be the money you spend. The real cost of buying something is the opportunity cost. It's the thing you would have bought instead that now you can't buy, right? If I spend my money buying one thing, I can't spend that money now on something else, right? The something else is what I gave up being able to buy, right? That is the actual cost of my decision. Okay, so you face these decisions, you face opportunity costs, and choices are everywhere, right? You're making choices and decisions all the time, and every single choice that you make has a cost to it. It has an opportunity cost. There's something you gave up doing, there's something you gave up being able to buy, right? Whatever it is. And these are the decisions you got to make here. And life is full of these decisions, and you're making them every day. And hypothetically, you're making the ones that maximize benefit for you and minimize the cost as a perfectly rational individual. But that's not really the way that it works, because people can be kind of dumb. All right. It used to be in economics, there was this kind of positing of a homo economicus, right? This sort of Homo sapien, but economic person. And this was a perfectly rational individual that based their decisions upon very good, complete information, and they did whatever it was that would maximize utility, right? That'd be like happiness or usefulness to them. And yeah, just very, very rational, perfectly decision-making creatures. And if this was the case, then you could predict what it was that people were going to do. But that really wasn't the reality. The reality is that people are consumed by cognitive biases. They are emotional creatures. They have just bad ideas. They're influenced by others and by society, right, and friends and family, right? There's lots of things that go into it, right? And so this is where you kind of have economics intersecting with psychology, and this becomes known as behavioral economics. And here you can kind of predict what it is that people might do based upon these weird things that people do. In the old economics, right, or the Homo economicus, there might be outliers, but they thought, well, some people would do more and some people would do less, and it zeroes out so we can go back to our, nice, perfect little formal model. But people don't usually do that, right? It's not usually some do more, some do less, and all evens out, right? It's actually, no, you can kind of predict that most people will do, let's say, more in a situation. They're not going to do less. So it doesn't zero out. You can actually kind of predict what people do because people tend to behave in certain ways, which are not necessarily rational. That people are very irrational creatures. So here's some examples of irrationality that come into play, right, and how they work out as you as a consumer, for example. There's the endowment effect, right? The endowment effect is the idea, you're not going to be testing on these or anything. These are just examples of some cognitive biases that people have. But the endowment effect is the idea that you fear loss more than what you appreciate gain, right? That when you have stuff, you don't want to lose those things. And because you're very motivated not to lose those things, you might act in ways that are somewhat irrational. That might be in your interest to take certain risks, but you don't want to take certain risks because, again, you don't want to wind up losing what it is that you have. There's the anchoring bias. The anchoring bias is the idea that when you're exposed to information initially, that information tends to anchor your thinking or your understanding. So let's say you walk into a store and you see a product, I don't know, let's say you're in the market for a blender. You walk in and right at the very front there's a blender for $200. Okay, and then you go to the blender aisle, and then you see one for $150, and you're like, oh well, that $150 one, that's a good deal right there. That's a good bargain. All right. But what's happened is that because you saw that $200 blender initially, that's anchored in your head that blenders are $200, and so therefore you see anything cheaper than that as a better deal, as a good deal, because cheaper than what you have anchored yourself into thinking. Okay? And so stores, for example, can do this where they purposely put higher priced goods at the entrance of the store, fancier stuff, so that you are anchored into thinking like, this is the baseline. And if that creates the baseline, then anything that's going to be cheaper than that you see as being a better deal, right? And you're more motivated to buy those things than you otherwise would have. You can imagine if it was the opposite, right? So if you walk into the store and the stuff you see at the very front, right, is, yeah, let's say cheaper, and then everything else within the store is going to be more expensive, you don't want to buy that stuff. So if you walked into that store and the first blender you saw right when you walked in was $50, right? You go to the blender aisle and now you see that $150 blender. You're going to think to yourself, well, no, this is a bad deal getting the $150 blender, because blenders are supposed to be around the $50 range, right? Because that's what you got anchored by when you came in, all right? So stores will try to manipulate this in their advantage. The ambiguity effect. The ambiguity effect is that you tend to focus kind of on one sort of quality, right? That there are lots of factors that go into buying a product, and you can kind of get mystified by all the things, so you are more likely to focus on certain things instead of others, right? Actually, no. Hold on. That would be, I'm going to go bounded rationality. Sorry, I got mixed up. This is a description of bounded rationality. So here's an example. Protein is really big right now. So if you go to a grocery store, they slap the label protein on every stuff. Well, and then that's the only thing you start looking at is whether or not they have got protein or how many grams. You start ignoring other things about the product, right? It could be the product has a bunch of sugar, and it is not actually all that great for you, but that's not what you're focusing on. And so sellers and stores can get very good at using this bounded rationality. We're going to be focusing on one thing and ignore other factors, right? So you're not a perfectly informed consumer the way the Homo economicus would be. Instead, you're focusing on certain things and ignoring others. All right, let's see. Okay, that ambiguity effect, go back there. The ambiguity effect is that we like certainty over ambiguity. So if you have a choice between something that you're certain about and something that you're uncertain about, you tend to veer for going for the certain, right? Even if the certain may be not a great situation in and of itself, you're still going to veer that way simply because that's the thing you know. That's the thing you're pretty sure about, all right? So you can, the example I used in one of these assignments was there's a teacher teaches a course you signed up for, and they're an okay teacher, not great, not bad, they're just all right. And you have a choice between them and some new teacher you know nothing about, right? A lot of people are going to go in the direction of, well, you know, the devil you know. This teacher is not great, but at least I know what they're about, right? And they're more likely to go with them than what they are the new teacher, because that introduces uncertainty they don't like. All right. Automation bias is that you tend to go with what automated systems say. All right, you go wherever the mapping system tells you to go when you're driving along, including maybe making some illogical moves, right? Or maybe not the best moves, or what you should know is not the best way to get there. Be doing anyway because that's what the computer tells you. Right? Or ChatGPT or Claude tells you to do something or other, or gives you some kind of information. Maybe you encounter info later that suggests that ChatGPT was wrong, right, or hallucinated that information. But still, you don't want to disbelieve the ChatGPT because that's what it said, right? And the reason we do this is because it takes away our cognitive load, right? So we might use the Maps program to get us somewhere because we don't have to think about it, right? We have cashless effect. The idea of cashless effect is that when you're not spending physical money, actual cash, you are likely to spend more money, right? And the reason for this is that the physical act of having to part with cash, with that thing that you value, psychologically, that parting with it affects you. And if you don't have that, if you're just spending what seems like kind of digital or virtual money out of your debit card or a credit card or whatever system, then you're likely to spend more than what you would have if you actually had to physically part with cash. Okay? Now, you guys are growing up in a society where you haven't used a whole lot of cash in general, but if you did, you'd feel a little more. Right. But you see this in other ways also. If you go to the State Fair of Texas, they don't use cash. They don't use money at all, right? They use those coupons. You buy a bunch of coupons, and then you spend the coupons. Well, one of the reasons they do that is, they won't tell you this, but one of the reasons they do a system like that is that you don't feel like you're spending real money when you're using the coupons, even though you are. I mean, right now it's dollar for dollar, so one coupon is worth $1, so it's easy to keep track of it. But still doesn't feel quite like you're spending real money when you're using the coupons. So even though you're buying that fried whatever, and it's 12 coupons, right, you know that's $12 right there. But it's a weird thing where if you were out and about and you saw that thing for $12, you probably wouldn't spend that money. But it's 12 coupons, oh yeah, sure, let's load up on the fried stuff. Yep. Choice overload. This is a good thing and a bad thing for stores, but choice overload is where you get overloaded with the number of choices. Like you go to the cereal aisle in a grocery store and you get overwhelmed by just how much cereal is there and the different options involved, right? You open up your streaming service of preference, like Netflix, and you're trying to find the right show or the right movie you want to watch, but there's so many of them. And you spend 5-10 minutes scrolling, and and eventually you give up, right? So sometimes this would be work in a store's favor because you eventually just give up and you just grab something and just buy and you stop thinking about it because you're tired of thinking about it. Or the downside is you get shut down. Streamers very much worry about this problem, and they try to come up with ways to try to get around it or try to use the algorithm to find things that they think that you're going to want to watch. So you're not going to doom scroll through the options and then just close out of the service. Okay. Decision fatigue. You are most vulnerable to making bad financial decisions later in the day, late afternoon, and into the evening. And the reason for this is that you've made so many choices and decisions throughout the day, your brain is just tired, right? So you might feel physically or emotionally tired, but your brain is literally physically tired. Your mind is done, right? You're tired of making decisions, and so you're more likely to make an impromptu or bad decision just because you don't want to think about it. You're just done making them, right? And when you go into stores, studies show that you've got about 25 minutes of a window of good decision making. Then you've got about 20 to 40 minutes, or excuse me, another 20 minutes of okay decision making. And after around 40 minutes of being in a store, your brain is just done, right? Your mind is done, right? Because you've been looking at a whole bunch of different options for what to buy. You've been looking at prices, you've been evaluating options. And after about 40 minutes of that, you just can't take anymore. And you're more likely to make a bad decision or a bad purchase or an impromptu purchase. Again, because your brain, your mind is literally tired of weighing options. Okay, and stores can use this to their advantage, where they want to keep you there for, say, more than 20, 40 minutes, because once you're there, you're going to stop carefully analyzing your purchase options. This is one of the reasons you go to stores. The layout is kind of weird, right? And they don't give you any sort of time cues. There's no windows for the store, so you can't see outside and get time cues. There are no clocks inside the stores because they don't want you to think about how long you've been there. They know what they're doing. Okay, framing effect. A framing effect is where you try to frame something as positively or negatively despite whether or not it actually is positive or negative. So let's say there's a disease and there are two medications that are available for it. Let's say I represent medication number one. I say, well, you should use my medicine because if you take it, there's a 60% chance that you're going to be perfectly cured. Right? But man, you shouldn't take this other medication over there because we've done studies, right? And there's a 40% chance if you take this medication, this other medication, that you're going to die. Okay? Well, if you put it that way, then you are going to be just implicitly leaning more towards the first medication. But wait, if we look at the math here, they both have the same options, right? It's a 60-40, right? Both of them are 60% you're going to be fine, 40% you die, right? But with the first medication, I framed it in a positive sense. You're going to live, right? 60% you're going to live. And with the other medication, 40% you're going to die, right? So I framed it in different ways, which means that you're going to be more amenable to one and not the other. Yep. Hyperbolic discounting. Hyperbolic discounting is going to be where you are more concerned with the now than what you are later on, right? You don't care about your future self as much as what you care about your present self. So you're more likely to go for instant gratification and discount how much you're going to need things or want things later on. Okay? Sunk cost fallacy is going to be when you have already sunk time and or money into something. And because you have already sunk that money into it, you feel like you have to keep sinking time and money into it to make it worthwhile. Okay? But this is irrational. Okay? So if I've invested in something, let's say that I'm looking at opening a business and I've already invested, say, $20,000 into this business, into getting things moving. Okay? So once I've already invested $20,000, I'm not getting that back, right? That $20,000 is gone. I'm not going to get that back one way or another. I shouldn't be thinking, well, I've already invested $20,000, so I need to invest more money to make this happen. I need to stop and think, okay, well, I've already invested $20,000, but I don't get that money back one way or another. I need to be thinking, will it be beneficial to me to invest further money? All right. If it's beneficial to keep investing, then things are looking good. Then yes, I can keep investing. But if I've gotten $20,000 in and I realize no, this is turning out badly. Now that I've done more research, I've gotten this far. It looks like things are gonna. This isn't a good business for me to try opening. Then I should stop. It sucks that I've already lost the $20,000, absolutely, but that doesn't mean that I should keep investing more money to try to make it happen when it's already going to be looking bad, right? So just because you've already invested time and money is irrelevant to whether or not you should continue investing time and money, right? It should only be at this point in time, is it going to be beneficial for me to invest more time and money? Not because I already have in the past and that stuff I can't get back. That's sunk, it's gone. I don't get it back one way or another. Stop thinking about that and stop making that influence your future decisions. Yep. And the last one there, zero risk bias, which is just going to be where we tend to gravitate towards things that are going to have better risk potentials for us, right? All right. Now, if we put all this together, right, we're going to use IKEA as a case study of psychological tricks, right? So you've been to IKEA, I assume, and you come to how it is that it operates. There's a thing called the IKEA effect. This is actually the name of it. And the IKEA effect is that when you invest some of your own effort into something, you value it more. So IKEA saves money by shipping its furniture disassembled in those flat packs because it makes it cheap to be able to ship them. And then you assemble the furniture. So they save money by shipping disassembled furniture, but you wind up having a little bit greater attachment to that cheap furniture simply because you had to put it together. Even though it's still kind of cheap furniture. If it came pre-assembled, you wouldn't feel quite the same connection to it. They use decision fatigue against you, both good and bad. Okay, so, bell. Yeah. So they keep you in the store long enough. They have that weird windy path, right? That maze where you go all around the store, right? That gives you some decision fatigue. It could wind up, you start wanting just to get out of there, but it also can lower your defenses some, where you're more amenable to buying stuff you maybe wouldn't have done otherwise. But this goes back to the next one here. That forced path, that maze, you actually start to forget why you went there. Maybe you went there because you were only interested in one or two things, but you spend that time going through that maze and looking at all this other stuff, you start to lose your focus. All right, you start to look at a whole bunch of other stuff instead. That's the purpose of going through all that, even though that they can make it much easier to go through it. Right, this is the sort of logic that's used out malls and lots of stores where they have what seems like kind of a weird layout, not what seems to be a sensible layout, but they're trying to distract you and get you to take paths through the store to get you to forget why you came there to begin with. The Gruen effect is partially this, right, this weird path, and partially laying things out in an attractive manner. So if you go to IKEA, they have those different showrooms. Like, this is what your living room could look like. This is what your bathroom could look like. This is how gorgeous your kitchen could look, right? With the appropriate lighting and stuff like that, right? So they're trying to entice you to be able to buy stuff. The restaurant reset. When you go to the big IKEA stores, right, you're halfway through, like you go up to the top floor, you go around, and right before you go down to the bottom floor, oh, well, there's the restaurant area. Yeah, I'm kind of tired, right? I just saw all this stuff, and my brain is kind of overwhelmed. Let's stop and eat. I get myself some Swedish meatballs and whatever other things I can't pronounce. I can't pronounce anything at IKEA. So I get that stuff, I get some food in me, I get some of that glucose going, and all of a sudden, ready to shop some more, right? So you wind up having this reset halfway through, which motivates you to kind of buckle down and keep shopping. They use the anchoring effect. We talked about this before. They'll put certain items kind of up front. They're going to be maybe a little bit expensive, the fancier option. So that is what you have in your mind, which makes other things that you see there look more affordable. They're loss leaders. A loss leader, stores will do this, where it's something to kind of get you into the store, to get you to buy, that they actually take a loss on. They don't make a profit. They'll actually lose money on it, but it motivates you to spend money on other things at the store. Bula Bula. This is a weird thing that IKEA is known for. This is what they call it. But this is where you see those big bins of stuff. Right? You know, it'd be a bin of spatulas or a bin of little stuffed animals and stuff like that. And the reason they do those bins is it makes it seem like you're getting great deals on the stuff and they're super affordable because there's so much of it that when you see a lot of something, you're like, oh, when there's a lot of something, it's not as valuable. So you look at that and you're more likely to buy that because it seems like you're getting a good deal on something cheap because look how much of that stuff there is. The Diderot effect is where you get kind of like consolation buying. You buy one thing because you bought that one thing, you're going to buy other things. Like you buy a desk and it's got the IKEA pegboard. Well, I got that. I'm going to buy the accessories to go with that pegboard. Or I buy the IKEA couch. Well, you know, I was in that showroom and that coffee table and that chair looked awfully nice with that couch, and then you start buying that stuff instead. So IKEA will sell things as sets, and they have like collections and stuff like that. All right, and so you know, the idea there is you buy one thing and then you start buying other things, right? You accessorize, you go with the accessories to go with the stuff, or things that look good together. And then finally got the decoy effect. The decoy effect is where you put two things next to each other, and it's kind of like anchoring, but this can work in reverse, where you put like the most basic chair possible, right? And IKEA does have uncomfortable chairs. And it's kind of funny. I go to IKEA and I'm like, oh, I'm going to try on that chair. And it turns out that it's horribly uncomfortable. And so they'll position these things next to each other and make one look better than another. Okay. So what's the point of all this? It's kind of to help you understand why it is you do what you do. The smart parts as well as the stupid parts, right? You want having these biases that are in place and the way you perceive things. This comes into play when we talk about income. It comes into play especially when it talks about spending, and it comes into play when it talks about budgeting. Why it is that you do what you do, right? So it's good to know a little bit about yourself and what it is that you're faced with so you make better decisions. But scarcity forces choices upon you. Scarcity forces opportunity costs upon you, and you got to make these decisions. So how you make money, how you spend money, how you plan to spend money, right? All this is because of scarcity. It's all because of opportunity cost. And you have rational parts of you working, but you also have very irrational parts of you working at the same time. You're a human. You're not a computer, right? You're not Homo economicus. You are something else, right? And so we'll talk later about some of this stuff too. Last few things, I put a few videos in here. Even little kids think like little economists sometimes, and they're also small.
So do you guys think being fast is better than being slow?
Yeah, it's better to be fast, to not be bitten by a werewolf, and then you'll be turned into one, and you'll have to stay in, and then you'll have to get shaped because you'll be too hot, and then you're like, and then you're like, which means I wish I was back to a human.
What? It's not complicated. Faster is better, and AT&T is the nation's fastest. Faster is better, and AT&T is the nation's fastest.
Who thinks more is better than less? Okay, why?
More is better than
More
less.
is better than less,
Okay,
because
why?
if stuff is not less, if there's more less stuff, then you might want to have some more, and your parents just don't let you because there's only a little.
Right.
We want more. We want more. Like you really like it. You want more. Like you really
I follow
like it. You want
It's
more.
not complicated. More is better. It's not complicated. More is better.
Would you like a pony?
Yeah.
Would you like a pony? Would you like a pony?
Yeah.
Would you like a pony?
Yeah.
Here you go. This is for you.
Oh,
Here you go. This is for you. Yeah.
you didn't say it could have a real
Yeah.
one. You didn't
Well, you didn't ask.
have a real one.
Well, you didn't ask.
Even kids know it's wrong to hold out on somebody. Why don't banks? We're Ally, a new bank that alerts you when your money can be working hard.
Yeah, Rob.
Alerts you when your money can be working